Episode of The Crowded Booth. I'm Bryce Coon alongside Mason Waddell and Cal Culpepper, and today we're going to be talking about bass fishing at the high school, college, and professional level. Before we get started, I want to let you know to follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can be well informed on the next show and when it's going to take place. Make sure to follow us on all of those so you can follow, like, and subscribe to get updates and daily updates to see where we'll be next. All right, so first question for you guys. Not a lot of people know about bass fishing as a sport itself. It seems to be this long-standing tradition of a hobby you go out and do with your dad or your grandfather. What is something you've seen as your time, and why did you get into it? I'll start with you, Cal. Why did you decide to get into bass fishing, and where did that start?
Well, I live on Lake Harding, have my whole life, so my dad got me started bass fishing at a very early age, strictly bass fishing. I mean, that was what he was into, so I guess that's what he felt obligated to get me into. So I started at a very, very young age, and as I got older and older, there'd be little spurts where I would get out of it and then get back into it, and then finally I got really into it and started tournament fishing. Actually, the very first tournament I ever fished with my dad, and I actually caught the big bass in that tournament and won $600. So that kind of lit a fire in me and really started my obsession for not only bass fishing but tournament bass fishing, because I'm a competitive person, and honestly, even when I go out fun fishing, it's still a competition for me. It's just the way I am. I'm more of I guess just tournament fisherman in general. Like you said, it's most people just do it for a hobby, but for me, it's a lifestyle, really.
So Mason, Cal kind of talked about how his dad, kind of got him into it, and obviously your dad's been influential in a lot of the things that you've been able to do. Where did you get your start, and obviously y'all being on Harris County's team, what is one thing that kind of about your journey?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it's funny. Cal he was kind of born into the whole bass fishing scene. His dad's a huge bass fisherman and a great bass fisherman, and the whole lake fishing scene with learning the different tactics and the different patterns that go along with competitive bass fishing, that was instilled in Cal at a very young age. And obviously my dad kind of took a different route. He's a big hunter, and that's what he does as a profession. So I hunted. That's what I did as a kid. That was the deal. And I played baseball and football and did that whole deal. So I never really had fishing as a sport. Never knew it could be a sport. So I started fishing. I think the first time I ever went fishing was with my stepdad, Jeff, and we went out to, actually, my dad's dad, my granddad, went out to our pond in Booger Bottom, and I remember I had like a little curly tail worm and just threw that thing around all day, didn't know what I was doing, didn't really know what we were going to catch, and I remember Jeff caught a few fish, and I thought it was super cool, like, man, this is pretty cool, being outside, having some good times out in the water. And I remember I'm reeling that worm in, and I hook into this fish, and I'm reeling this. I got this just piece of crap Zebco, and that drag is screaming. And I remember reeling that fish up to the boat, and I'm fighting him. And I was very young, and I just remember the fight of that fish. And I got up to the boat, and I remember it was like a 5-pound bass, and my stepdad was just pumped up, and I was so pumped up. I didn't even know what was going on, but I knew it was freaking awesome, and I knew it was a really cool experience. And from that point on, I really got excited about going fishing. We started going more and more. I started going with my dad more and more, and I kind of started getting into. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, watching the pros, and this whole world opened up to me with fishing, where it's not just a curly tail worm out in the pond. I mean, there's deep fishing, there's shallow fishing, there's structure, there's docks, there's so many different variables, and just an endless amount of variables you have to learn to master. And it blew my mind when I really started digging into it and figuring out this fishing thing isn't just a weekend hobby thing. It can be more than that, and it can really be a skill that you can hone in and master. So basically, I think I met up with Cal. We were both playing baseball at the time, and he was actually doing some tournaments then, but baseball was our main sport. And so basically we met through that and started talking about fishing and the tournaments. And
found out we lived like 5 minutes from each other.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically, I was finding out about all this cool gear, and so I was saving up money and was finally buying some of this nicer gear, and finding out about all this new stuff, and it was just a crazy journey where I was just so entranced in it. You know, it's funny, I almost did have those phases where I would phase out of it, but then I'd come right back, and I was like, holy cow, this is like a passion. Like I'd never had anything that I was really interested in like that before. And so, you know, I was more of a pond fisherman, and then kind of a weekend warrior. I'd go out with my dad on the weekends and fish Lake Harding. My dad ended up buying me a John boat, and I'd go out there a lot. And so me and Cal shared some of the same stories about Lake Harding, and we talked about different tactics and what was going on in the lake at the time. And so I remember it was 8th grade, and Cal and his parents were actually the pioneers of the Harris County bass fishing team. They started that club for our school. And Cal had asked me if I would be interested in joining it, being his partner. And at the time, I was super busy between hunting all the time. I was still a super big hunter, and you know, I still did my pond fishing, and I was really consumed in baseball at the time. So I ended up passing over the offer, and man, that's a huge regret of mine now. But anyway, so what ended up happening was he did his thing and fished all throughout till 10th grade, and he had some good success. And that's actually when he came up to me and he told me that into his 11th grade year that his partner was thinking about going into the Marines, so he was going to need a new partner. And so I thought about it for a while, and I didn't have a sport that I was playing at the time, and so I got to thinking about it, and I was like, man, this could really be cool. I'd like to get into the tournament thing. So I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea what it would bring me, but I decided, I was like, man, let's do it. I want to do it. So I remember that first tournament, it was like just the butterflies that had my stomach. It was crazy. I went from being at the pond in Booger Bottom out here with, I mean, it's crazy. You know, you never realize it, and I'm a true inspiration to somebody who wants to get into it, because I never knew how big the sport was. I mean, I got on the water, it looked like Disney World out there. There's just lights everywhere, and just boats, and so many people that are interested in the sport. And man, we just started fishing, and before we knew it, we were doing really well. I realized that I wasn't as bad as a fisherman I thought. I started adapting and learning new things, and you know, me and Cal realized pretty fast that we were really good as a team, and we ended up winning a state championship middle of the year, about February, and then went on to nationals, and actually ended up getting runner-up in the nationals. And it's just been uphill from there. It's been, or downhill, I guess you could say. It's been awesome, man. So that's kind of my beginnings, and yeah, it's been crazy.
Well, it's definitely something exciting that the average sports fan, you know, you tune into all the big major networks, and fishing's really not out there for people to see. I mean, think of ESPN, especially right now. I mean, you don't see that. You see the NBA, Major League Baseball's on. So it's not something that's widely covered. What is one of the biggest things is, you know, you obviously started high school, you started the high school level when you got there, and Mason, you a little bit later down the road. What is one of the biggest things you've seen in your time during high school of the growth here in the state of Georgia of high school fishing?
Oh, the growth has been incredible. Like when I first started it, and this is actually came up as a Facebook memory. My mom showed it to me not too long ago. It was actually a few months back, and it was one of the first. I think it was the first. It was probably like, I'd say it was in the first 3 high school tournaments I'd ever fished, and in this specific tournament, there was 30 boats, so 30 teams. And now you look at it, and for example, our state championship coming up this weekend, there's going to be close to 200 boats, and we fish tournaments where there's more. We fished a tournament this past summer. There's almost 500 boats, and that just really shows the growth of it and how much these kids are getting involved in fishing. That's something I really like to see, and something I'm really proud of being a part of. It's because there's so much to do in the fishing industry, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. There's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of success to
be had.
Be had, yeah. And that's just something that again, I'm just really proud to be a part of it. It's definitely a great sport. Like, I just want people to realize how big it truly is.
Yeah, we talked about the exposure. Probably doesn't get a ton, but when you can see something go from that small to that big just in a span of, I guess, 4 years, that's incredible. Yeah. It's got to be really cool to see some. You know, you were a part of that initial group, you might feel like, and now to see it grow like this into something that, you know, a lot of high schools are now adopting, or they're now getting these club teams. And colleges even, and we're going to get into that. Colleges are even putting this in the budget so they can have this to appeal to these kids to kind of have a middle way between, you're going in high school to professional. There wasn't any middle ground there. Before we get to the college, what do you feel like, talking about how it's not really put out there in the media, what is each, and this is for both of you, and we can start with Mason, what do you feel like is something that people should know about the sport that they don't know? We talked about, a lot of people said, I used to fish with my dad or something like that, but the sport aspect of it, what is something that people might not realize about it?
Well, I think, to the average person that has never been fishing or has maybe went fishing once or twice, there's a lot of different types of fishing. You got your bluegill, crappie, your bass, catfish, whatever it might be. But I think the majority of people think, and I've heard people say this before, they think that we're out there on some river floating on a pool float, casting a bobber out there with a red wiggler on it, and it's just.
Or some people even think just sitting on the bank, just out of pond, just waiting for your bobber to go down.
Yeah, it's just there's no clarity as to what we're doing, and if they could enter my mind and realize how my clock ticks and how I think about approaching these tournaments. I mean, the state championship, we're about to wig out, deciding what our game plan is going to be for state, and I just don't think. I think people think that we're going to go out there and we're just going to put the boat in the water and troll around and throw around some of our favorite lures and hope to do good.
Just hope for the best.
Yeah, just hope for the best, and rely on luck. But it's just not that. And I think, the sport's growing. You got things like Major League Fishing, and that's a really big deal on Outdoor Channel. Somebody that doesn't know a thing about fishing can go and watch those pros and how they have to adapt to those lakes that they bring them to with no prior knowledge. That's a super cool show. I encourage everybody that is interested in learning about tournament fishing to go and check out that show. That's an awesome show. But there's got to be more things like that where people can go into it and relate without just having to go straight into it and dive deep into tournament fishing. There's got to be baby steps, and if we don't have that, it's not gonna grow. I think the steps are in place to get it there, but there's still got to be a lot of growth to come.
Well, because like you said, it's hard. Person that's never been fishing, how are they expected to get into
Exactly.
very competitive tournament fishing? Like you said, it kind of like the baby steps. It's something that can get them in and is able to have the same passions that you all have. So now, Cal, what is something for you that you feel like, and I know, Mason, that was a pretty good answer, so what is something that you feel like people don't know about the sport that you've had probably a little more experience than Mason here, especially in the competitive realm? What do you feel like some people should know that they probably don't or don't realize?
Something that, and I'll go ahead and say it's like a really kind of fires me up a little bit, is when people say how it's just luck. And it's far more than that. Fishing is not just luck. It takes, you don't walk up there to the plate with a baseball bat and just say, it's going to be luck if I hit this ball. There is skill, and there's skill in all sports, and fishing is implied in that. You got to know what color lures, what type of lures to throw in certain conditions. You got to, look at, the weather, how hot it is, how cold it is, how hard the wind's blowing. All that plays into factors of how you're going to find that next bite. And in tournament fishing, every bite is critical. And one bite can lead you to another, and sometimes you just got to keep switching up and just hope you get to the kind of bag you need to win a tournament. But that's the main thing I want to say is it's not just luck. There's a bunch of skill involved. There's a bunch of skill involved, and like Mason said, if people would watch more shows, people who aren't big into fishing, if they're interested in learning more about it, watch those shows and really see how these pros go about a day of tournament fishing. And like you said, that Major League Fishing is a very good example, because most tournament trails and stuff like that, they know the lake they're going to. Like us, we know where we're going for our state.